Chris here taking a look at Edifier's W320TN. So this is what I like to call half in-ear style because they're not right in your ear, but they are a little bit. Now, they're very comfortable, the style, because you don't get the fatigue. They're not like the silicone tips that are right in your ear canal. You get a bit of pressure build up. And they don't lack in bass at all because Edifier has some 13mm dynamic drivers, and they've tuned them specifically, of course, for this style, and they do sound very good. I'll comment a little bit more of that later on in this review. So they support LDAC. They are high-res wireless audio certified. So it's using the LDAC codec, which of course is that 990 kilobits per second. That's almost 3 times more than SBC codec. And you do notice that. It removes that compression. It really opens up, I feel, the highs especially, and the mids a little bit, with the sound quality. So they are IP54, sweat and dust resistant, so rain as well is not going to be an issue with these at all. They're using pressure touch controls with them, which is good, and they do have adaptive active noise cancellation. So it depends on what it can hear. It will counter that depending on the sound, so the environment sound. So maybe you're on public transport, maybe it's an area with a lot of people talking. Well, it's going to be countering that, which is great. And it's got 6 microphones in total, and it does apply AI noise cancellation to your mics here for improved call quality. And finally, battery life with the ANC off and not using LDAC, 5.5 hours on a single charge, and then an additional 22 out of our tiny little case here. Included with our W320TNs, we have a manual in various different languages, important safety information also in various different languages, a Type A to Type C cable. Now the charge time is about an hour for the earbuds and an hour and a half for the case. Checking on the weight, so each of the earbuds is only 4 grams each, and our total travel weight is 50 grams. Now it is quite slippery, especially if you're in winter and your hands are a little bit cold. You will find this slippery and it's easy to drop. I've already dropped this case already, but it's quite drop resistant. I just made a bit of a mark here on the top. That was it, which was quite good. So status LED here on the front. On the bottom there, we've got our Type C port. There is a button on the rear of it. This is for the dual mode. So yes, you can pair up 2 different devices to this, but if you use LDAC, you only get just the one device because it's not compatible with the codec. So this button here is for the multi-pairing and for the reset of them too. Edifier branding, the hinge does feel really good. And when they're closed and inside there, they do pass my rattle test. Can't hear it rattling around at all. So there's a magnet that holds them into place. The charging port connector is down there in the bottom, pogo port pin connectors, and they sit in there very snug, and that lid keeps itself closed, or when it is open, it will also stay open. So nice design to the case. I just wish they'd given a bit of texture. I do find it a little slippery as mentioned. The earbud's plastic is very good, so there's no sharp edges where you can see there's a bit of a join just along here, but no, that lip is good. Nothing feels uncomfortable. In fact, these are all about comfort. Being the half in-ear style, very comfortable indeed. You don't feel like either they're going to fall out because of the stem design to them. I do find that it makes it a little bit more secure, the fit. So we've got the charging contacts right there. This is a mic at the bottom there for the voice calls. Now we do have 3 mics on each of them, so that's 6 mics in total, and they do have AI algorithm there for the calls, and I find it works really well. I'll give you a sample of that later on in a very noisy environment with cars driving past, bicycles, people walking and talking and whatnot, and you really didn't hear any of that, so it works great. So we do have a in-ear sensor. This is using an infrared there, so it knows when it's in your ear, and it will auto pause or auto start. You can disable that if you want to. So within this, we've got 13mm dynamic drivers, and we have the adaptive active noise cancellation. Now the touch controls are using pressure. So it's this area here. You need to squeeze here in order to go through the different touch controls. And I find it doesn't quite work as well as the typical just tap on the back capacitive, but what it does do is stop those accidental triggers when you're wearing these, or maybe when you're sleeping or you roll over or something. It won't happen, but I just find that every time I need to give it quite a bit of a squeeze. I even adjust the pressure sensitivity, but it only works about 8 out of 10 times for me, so I wish it was a little bit more sensitive, even at the maximum setting I have with them. Now, I'm running them at the moment with LDAC enabled. So yes, they do have high-res audio wireless. They're certified for that. And I have the option here with my Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra through the settings to enable or disable it, or you go through the application. Now, you do need a more modern Android phone for LDAC. Not all of them support them, the older ones, and this is not going to be for Apple users at all. But when you have it on, you get that higher bit rate. Now, it's almost over 3 times more SBC, the codec, the basic one. That's that bit rate. So you lose and you just remove all of that compression that you sometimes would hear with that SBC codec. Using LDAC, it really, I think, brings to life the highs and the mids. That's where you're going to notice it, where you might notice some of that terrible compression you get with SBC. Now, it depends on what you're listening to. So if you have, say, FLAC files at a 24-bit high bit rate, you will hear the difference. If you're just on YouTube or you're listening to your really old ripped MP3s at only 96 kilobits per second, you're not going to hear any difference at all, so I would not bother. And the reason is the battery life. Now, right now, I'm at 73% with one ear, the left one, and 85% with the right. And that's using LDAC with the active noise cancellation on. Is very poor, the battery life. You're looking at just over about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. Now, if you just use SBC, and the active noise cancellation off, it's 5.5 hours up to 27. So that's decent battery life there. But when you use the noise cancellation LDAC or just LDAC by itself, I find the battery life to be poor. So that is the trade-off because it consumes a lot more energy, a lot more of the battery. So this is our application where you can go and set that option there for LDAC. So I'm using the highest sample rate possible too. So if you want to balance it out a little bit so it doesn't hit that battery life, you can use just the 48 kilohertz mode, but I like the 96 kilohertz, and that's 24-bit, and that's what I've been listening to with some really high bit rate FLAC files, and it just sounds fantastic for this style, the open ear. Pressure sensitivity, I've got that at 15 at the maximum, and sometimes I find that it could even be a little bit more sensitive just to go through and trigger those touch controls, which, by the way, control settings, you can edit them. And I like this because a lot of brands don't offer this customization. They just do not give us any touch control customization. Edifier does, which is really good. You can find your earbuds. You've got dual device connection. Now, that does not work using LDAC because of the codec. It's not going to support it. It needs to be the SBC codec for that. You've got prompt volume, power off, the shutdown timer, Bluetooth settings, and factory settings. You can go along and just reset everything if you wanted to. Now, it does, of course, operate on Bluetooth 5.3 these. And there are some soothing sounds you've got with the application if you need to relax a bit, you're stressed out or whatever, or you're trying to sleep. Really good option to have with the application. And if you swipe here, you can go into their different equalizers. So they have Classic, which I've just been using. Edifier's Classic I find is pretty good. I review these out of the box. So you've got Pop, Classic, Rock, and you can go along and put it into game mode too if you want to. Now that game mode is going to bring the latency down to 80 milliseconds with these. The W320TNs have a 13mm driver. It's using a multi-layer composite diaphragm unit, and they sound very good. So you've got a wide range with these. You've got 40 kilohertz, and the bandwidth can go right up to 990 kilobits per second if you're using LDAC. So this is where it really opens them up that I was talking a little bit about before. So the highs, the mids, when you're using LDAC with a source file, this is very important. You must have a really good source file. This here is a very high bitrate FLAC file. It's 24-bit, and I'm in the 24-bit mode. You can hear it. It removes that compression, so the highs become very detailed, really clear without being overly harsh. Vocals sound a lot better. Lows, I would say you're not really affected too much by it. It's more the highs with the compression you hear that difference. But the bass in these, very good. Now, I was under that common misconception that this style, the open ear style or half in ear style, open fit, whatever you want to call them, just lacked in bass. They were not that good. And that was based off past experience, but I can tell you that's definitely not the case here with these. The bass is powerful, and they are loud too. They're very good, comfortable fit. So if you're after this style, definitely you go for them for that bass. For just in general, the tune I think is very good. So the mids, the highs, vocals, all checking out here, really good. And just such a comfortable, lightweight fit without having any pressure in my ears without those silicone tips. And the added bonus, of course, of their adaptive active noise cancellation. How about our latency then? Is there a noticeable delay when you're watching like an episode here of Vikings Valhalla on Netflix? No. It's very good. It seems to be perfectly in time with the actors' mouths. I don't notice any annoying delay or anything like that, which is great. The only time you will notice a slight delay, this is even with the gaming mode on, it's only a fraction of a second is when gaming, which is pretty standard for Bluetooth.
Microphone now with the Edifier W320TN. So it does have noise cancellation with the mic. So I'm actually walking in the street right now and I've got cars driving past, cyclists, other people walking too. And the mics are doing a very good job of removing that background noise so it can be understood. Like right now, I've got cars driving past me, making quite a bit of noise, and they're holding up really well.
Comfort of them is very good. This is one of the big pros of our W320TNs. So very easy to put on. And of course, with Bluetooth 5.3, they pair up pretty much just straight away. So they're not going to drop out. At least they don't with me. I've never had them fall out on me. With the stem there, it's very secure. Even going for like a short run, not going to have any issues with it at all. And they do not suffer from disconnections. I've had no problems with my Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. So connected that with a Bluetooth 5.3. No dropouts, no problems, no interference. They all seem to be pretty good. And the range of them is good. I've left my phone here. I've gone downstairs, and they've still been working just fine. Now I have a minor niggle with the touch controls on them. So it's the pressure touch control, not your typical tap capacitive. No, you need to press it either side and you hear the little audio feedback. It makes like a little click noise and then it does work. I just find that it only works about 8 times out of 10 for me. I wish it was a little better than that. And I do have the sensitivity, as I showed you with the application, set to 15. So it's at the maximum. So I hope a firmware update can just tweak that a little bit so it's not so hit and miss when you are using it. Now, speaking of that application, Edifier Connect, it is very good. I love all the options in there we get. So they even have controls that you can customize there for our pressure activated controls. A lot of brands don't even offer the touch customization there, so good to see. You've got your equalizers as well. I just use the classic, the default one from them, and the adaptive ANC. So the ANC on this does work very well for this style. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh yeah, they're better than in-ears. They won't beat in-ears with active noise cancellation because the in-ears have the benefit of course, silicon tips. They have the seal inside your ear canal just blocking off everything. Well, a lot more than these would. So it's good for this style. The noise cancellation I do like. You can hear it does make a difference, but it just won't be as good as in-ears. However, you gain so much more in the comfort. You get no pressure in your ear canal. You get none of that fatigue, so that all checks out. And the bass they deliver from those 13mm dynamic drivers, very good. And then if you use LDAC, removes that high top-end compression that you often hear. I know I pick up on that. You hear that compression with the highs and sometimes the mids a little bit. It sounds a little bit like washed out because it's all compressed there. So the waveform has been compressed and it's just not as good. But when you use the 96 kilohertz option, and then that's 24-bit too with the LDAC, and streaming at that 990 kilobits per second bit rate, you don't get any compression as long as your source files are good, of course. There's no point listening to YouTube or some really low quality MP3s using LDAC because you're going to hear absolutely no difference because the source file is the issue, or your source material that you're listening to, say YouTube or something. But with the quality files, you do hear the difference there. However, the battery life, yes. So this is the downside of this. And with anything that runs LDAC, the battery life really takes a hit. So if you run the adaptive active noise cancellation, and then you've got LDAC on, battery life with these, you'll be lucky to get 1.5 hours out of them on a single charge. Wow, that's not good. But you turn all of that off and go back to SBC and turn off the noise cancellation. It is then 5.5 hours, which is respectable. That is fine. You get the additional 22 from the case. So that there checks out. So the downside, yes, is that battery life using LDAC. Apart from that, if this is the style you're after, this half in-ear style, very comfortable, the audio quality is there, then they do check out. So thank you so much for watching my review here of Edifier's W320TNs.